I should start off by saying, whenever I volunteer to do one of these services, and trust me when I say that I do so with a great sense of fear and trepidation, I have a process that I go through which may or may not be familiar to some of those who are involved in the worship committee. First of all, since the services are actually mapped out several months ahead in a very general way, I look to see what the worship theme will be for the month. And I ask myself if I have anything possibly worthwhile to say on the topic before I volunteer to fill one of those services. And this month's theme I saw several months ago was freedom. And so I thought, I can work with that. And then over the next month or so, I slowly gathered my thoughts together and I waited for some sort of central idea to form within that concept. But I need you to think for a moment about the month that we've all lived through since I put my name down to do this talk today. In May, the Supreme Court was hearing a case which centered around birthright citizenship, which the current administration was trying to repudiate. As somebody not born in this country, that got my attention. They were also working on curtailing or revoking students' visas, and a graduate student at my alma mater of Tufts University was detained largely just because of her statements in support of Gaza. In the same month, the war in Gaza and the war in Ukraine escalated, and there appeared to be no end in sight for either one of them. It's a month later, and we're right where we were. Meanwhile, over the past month, the ever-escalating fight over the deportation of people who are here in this country perfectly legally has escalated to the point where we have soldiers in the streets of LA, politicians being publicly arrested, and ICE agents raiding Home Depot parking lots. Sure, freedom, I can do that. I have to confess that over the month, my thoughts turned towards more of a Jeremiad. Does anyone here know what a Jeremiad is? Say again?
Prophet.
Well, the prophet Jeremiah is what it's named for, but an actual Jeremiad, go ahead. It is, quite frankly, a fire and brimstone speech about what's wrong with this world. Not exactly. As you use, we sort of don't do that. There are exceptions, some of which I might mention. But that's what my... Yes, Ginger? You're absolutely right. Freedom isn't just about going outside and having equal rights, but about all kinds of things. Economic freedom. Shopping for food, I think, is the example you gave, and you're not wrong. Freedom is a global, a pervasive, and all-over concept. When you think about it, it's not a hard theme to find something to speak about, because anything can be about freedom. But as I mentioned, I had a hard time focusing on any kind of glass half full, which is what Unitarian Universalist reflections are sort of supposed to be. All I started seeing was the emptiness. All I started seeing was what we were losing. And a big part of me wanted to go up here and pound that pulpit and say, darn it, because the kids are still here. And I struggled over and over again to disengage from that. And I really chose my title based on some advice from a mentor of mine. As I said, I'm a teacher, but I'm a teacher in a mental health environment. So I work with a lot of social workers, and one of them taught me, one of the central lessons of social work is that our job is to comfort the irritated and to irritate the comfortable. I have two things to say about that. The first is that it's a misquote, that the original quote was actually by a humorist and satirist in the Post, I think it was the Saturday Evening Post, who was quoting a fictional character, an Irish bartender, who was really ranting about journalism. And the original quote is that the job of journalism is to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted, which is a little sharper. The second thing I want to say about that quote is it gave me my center point, the idea of being comfortable. That was where I came to rest. That's where my thoughts started to settle, and that's what I came to talk about today. The second thing I do when I'm putting together a reflection is on the top of a blank sheet of paper, not that we use paper anymore, but a blank word processor page, I actually write, and I've done this every time, and I will do it every time, our mission statement. Because I believe if I stand at this podium, I should speak to that in some way, shape, or form. And I found it uniquely helpful in this case. I wrote on the top of the page, explore spirituality, help me with this, engage community, and transform the world. That was my starting point. You see, we're Unitarian Universalists, and as I thought about it, this sense of discomfort that we're feeling, that I'm feeling right now, is not new. It's been with us the whole time. Throughout our history, this sense of discomfort and despair has been with us, driving us to transform the world. When we felt the despair brought on by the evils of slavery, we transformed that discomfort into action, preaching and moving for abolition. When Theodore Parker, famous Unitarian Universalist minister, or I forget if he was either Unitarian or Universalist, spoke out against slavery, he highlighted this discomfort in the phrase, I think we must get rid of slavery or we must get rid of freedom. And yet, he comforted his listeners later with the phrase that was later paraphrased by Dr. King in one of his more famous speeches. Because whether you know it or not, Theodore Parker is the author of the phrase, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So what Parker was saying is that in the midst of this great evil of slavery, in the midst of this great battle over abolition, and the battle wasn't just external, as Ginger pointed out, it was right there in his congregation, because there were those who believed in a gradualist approach, but Parker wasn't one of them. He wanted it ended now. He actually preached from the pulpit, and think about this for a moment, non-compliance with the fugitive slave law. That would be breaking the law from the pulpit. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was against the law just to advise people to break the law, to not cooperate with the acts of capturing and re-enslaving people who had escaped to the north. And this brought him some condemnation. Other preachers refused to trade pulpits with him. And the difference of opinions within his congregation, including, I'm sorry, but I forgot his first name, Baloo, was the gradualist who argued the other side of the case. Not Hosea, his brother. I think it's Alden. I have a personal connection to the Baloos. They founded Tufts University where I went. In any case, this difference of opinion within the congregation was strong enough to cause Parker to need to switch pulpits, to go to a different congregation, to found a different congregation. And as you do, this congregation became the seed of an abolitionist movement. Not an abolitionist movement, but a congregation dedicated to that radical abolition. So sometimes when you kick out the rabble-rousers, what you do is create rabble. And this, more than anything, sums up the evolution of Unitarian Universalism. In some other history, in the early 1800s, Margaret Fuller, another famous Unitarian Universalist, was not allowed to attend seminary. She was a woman. So she wrote a book called Women in the 19th Century, which became an early feminist guidepost. This is what happens when you punish the radicals. You get more radicals. We, Unitarian Universalists, have been at the forefront of the abolition movement, the suffragist movement, various anti-war movements from World War I straight up to the present, the civil rights movement, the LGBTQIA++ rights movements, the environmental justice movement, and many other areas, including immigration reform, economic justice, and prison reform. We've been there because, more than anything else, we've taken that discomfort with the world as it is and channeled it and used it and shared it. So really, when I back up far enough from the present day, farther than the last month, farther than the last 200 days, and even back from the most recent decade, I begin to see the truth behind our current sense of despair and discomfort. And that leads me to another truth that my mentor in social work taught me. She said, anger is a secondary emotion. I don't know if you know what that means, but I'll break it out for a second. Anger is not what we feel first. It's the manifestation of what we're feeling underneath. So whether it is despair, sadness, fear, anxiety, anger is a secondary result. So if we're feeling angry, and I don't know about you, but I have been. If we're feeling angry, the question is, what's beneath it? What gave rise to it? And most importantly, how do I work with that discomfort, share it, internalize it, then externalize it? I'll give you an example. This past week, the Supreme Court decided in a case called the United States versus Scrimeti. They agreed with a lower court ruling from the District Court of Tennessee, which said that a Tennessee law banning gender-affirming care for minors was constitutional. I'm going to say that again. Tennessee passed a law that said you can't provide gender-affirming care, including hormone therapy, to teens, to minors. The Tennessee court system affirmed that that was constitutional. The Supreme Court agreed with them. I cannot begin to describe to you how this enrages me. As someone who's been a tireless advocate for trans folks and kids, and someone who's witnessed firsthand how life-affirming and even how life-saving this care can be, this decision drove me nuts. But then I backed up, and I asked myself, as I'm now going to ask you, why is this making me uncomfortable? What's beneath it? Let's back up even further. Do you think, and I'm really looking for an out loud answer to this question, do you think that the people that opposed slavery, that stood at pulpits just like this one, that broke the law, that helped people on the Underground Railroad North, that risked their life, do you think they were comfortable? Yes or no? Heck no. For women's suffrage, do you think that the women and girls who left their homes, went out into public, stood up in halls and in parlors and spoke for women's rights, and then eventually carried signs in public, were comfortable? Do you think they were comfortable? No. During World War I, do you think it was a comfortable thing to say, we don't believe the U.S. should go to a war? No. Do you think that the gay rights advocates who often outed themselves, I'm going to say that again, by going public, these people risked their families, their jobs, and sometimes their lives. Do you think that they were comfortable? No. And do you think that the people currently marching, speaking, and yes, sometimes breaking the law to protect the rights of their fellow citizens are comfortable? No. So let's back up from it. Let's step away from this idea that we should somehow be comfortable, because it's a myth. Here in the millennium, it's easy to convince ourselves with the wonders of technology and the economic prosperity of the 90s and aughts. It's easy to convince ourselves that comfortable is normal. Never been the case. That's never been true. It's simply a convenient way to carry ourselves. And this goes back to my mentor again. It's not comfort we seek, but the illusion of comfort. I'm only comfortable until the room gets warm or till my sweater itches. When the sweater stops itching, I'm comfortable, but the rent might still be due. Comfort is something we tell ourselves so we can get to the next thing. But discomfort is something we need to embrace to do the next thing. Discomfort is where the world changes. So the question is, as Unitarian Universalists, what do we do with our discomfort? Well, I have a suggestion, also here historically true. How many of you have heard Dr. Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail? The context is simple. His fellow preachers, often of white churches in the North, condemned his activism. They said, "Why rock the boat? Freedom is coming. It will come. Why break the law? It's not right." His answer to them was really simple, if I can find it. In attempting to make his fellow clergy uncomfortable, he wrote, "History is the long and tragic story of the fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privileges voluntarily." That was his answer. He said, don't get comfortable. The world needs to change. He said, we can never forget that everything that Hitler did in Germany was legal, and everything that the Hungarian freedom fighters did in Hungary was illegal. He answered them basically, in sum, if you're uncomfortable with what I'm doing, good. Be uncomfortable. So what do we as Unitarian Universalists do? Well, I'm coming back now to our mission. So you're going to have to help me step by step with the recipe. What's item number 1? Our mission statement is explore spirituality. We get together. We ask ourselves, what's important to us? We look around at the world and we say, is the world in line with our values? Step 2, engage community. We gather with like-minded people. We talk, whether it's over a cup of coffee. Excuse me, that's 3 today. I'm keeping score. We gather in community. We speak from the pulpit. We write letters. We vote. We form groups. We march. This is community. That's what we do with our discomfort. We don't just say, I wish the world were otherwise. We say, this is the world we want. What's the next step? And lastly, transform the world. And there's a hidden truth in the 3rd part of our mission statement. The world is always transforming, every single day. It's always changing. One of my favorite science fiction authors is Octavia Butler, if you've ever read her. She founded a whole fictional religion on that the only universal truth is change. God, she said, is change. And I believe that. The only question is, what change? When? Where? Who? Are we the change, as Gandhi said? Because if we are, that's a good way to be uncomfortable. We gather together, and then we make the rest of the world just a little uncomfortable. And if we do it right, what's the result? Change. And you know what happens? The more we win, the more people react. Every single change I've mentioned on this list, abolition and the Civil War resulted in Jim Crow and Reconstruction and the KKK. Yes, there was a reaction to change. Okay? Women's suffrage provoked a reaction. Gay rights provoked a reaction that we're still feeling today. The good news is, if we change the world, everybody may be a little bit less comfortable, some people more so than others. The question is, are we comfortable with that?